Welcome to Biochemistry 2. Unit 1 is Metabolism Basics. It's kind of like the first unit of Biochemistry 1. There's not a whole lot you can really sink your teeth into yet. A lot of very broad general stuff that I'm just now understanding as I look through it my second and third time. So I'll point out what's important and what he tends to test over the most. So the first thing you're going to notice, you've seen a lot of these slides before. So there's some things to review. ATP being a universal currency of energy, 3 reasons why it has a high energy of hydrolysis. There might be a question on that. There's usually a question on oxidation numbers, so make sure to review that and remember how to count everything. Glucose and fatty acids are your fuels. The way you make energy in the body is the oxidation of carbon-based molecules. And then the classes of enzymes. So hopefully you have that still memorized from Biochemistry 1. If not, most important thing to do is memorize the classes of enzyme chart towards the back. That will come up in pretty much every unit after this one. So make sure you know that really well. As far as the new stuff, talk about what's important here. I kind of rank these. These are the things that are always most asked about questions. So if you look in the last 2 slides of the unit, there's catabolic versus anabolic pathways. Just think cats break things. So the catabolic are the breakdown, or you can think of it as anabolic builds, like anabolic steroids building muscle. The good thing is, all you have to do is pretty much pick one of them, because they're opposites. So if you know the stats about catabolic pathways, you know the opposite is anabolic pathways. It's as easy as that. For both of them, definitely know the examples that he gives, because he will ask based on the ones he has in his slides. So B vitamins is the next major topic. It'll come up in most units again. B vitamins help make coenzymes. B vitamins are also water soluble. So we're gonna skip around for a second here. Let's look at the B vitamin chart. So this column is totally optional, this B1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, or 6, 7, 9, 12. You don't need to know those B vitamins, but I found it's extremely helpful for abbreviations. So as you're making notes, rather than write out niacin every time, you can try it out B3. Or rather than pantothenate, you can try it out B5. So I think this really helps the shorthand and the studying and the memorization. But again, the brown is totally optional. You'll mainly be tested over being able to relate this blue column and the red column here. So this is just the name of the vitamin, and this is the coenzyme it makes. Remember in Biochemistry 1, he had the prosthetic groups and co-substrates listed. Now you need to know those, so make sure you have those down. As far as what's tested over the first unit, I'm not really sure. The ones that are going to be used the most and most likely are, coincidentally, the first 5 of them. So if this is all overwhelming, you need a place to start. Know these 5 inside and out, or 1, 2, 3, and 5. B6, 7, 9, and 12 are much smaller players. They come in later in biochemistry, so they're not that important to know from the beginning, but it doesn't hurt to start getting exposed to them. He very well could ask PLP. What's that coming from? Pyridoxine, or vitamin B, B6. See a couple other notes. FAD plus and FMN are both riboflavin. You can think of that F standing for the F in flavin. It's the flavin family. Niacin, NAD, NADH. If you see it in this form, this is the oxidized form with the plus sign here. If it has a hydrogen, this is the reduced form. So FAD plus is the oxidized form, and FADH2 would be the reduced form. FMN isn't used nearly as much. It pops up once. It's mainly FAD that you're going to be seeing. So there's a lot of charts towards the end. There are two in particular to talk about because you don't need to, stress yourself memorizing every single thing about them. The cofactors in metabolism chart. I'm finding it in my notes here. So if you're looking at cofactors in metabolism, I would know things like B2 and B3 are both electron carriers. B1 is aldehyde reactions. CoA, or pantothenate, is transferring acyl groups. So that group carried for the main ones we talked about. So starting these first 5, that should be good for the first test, most likely a quiz, anything goes as usual. But I would know these 3 for sure. Then there's one a couple slides later called enzyme cofactors. That one is much less important. I would put that as your very last priority in this whole unit. You kind of learn those as you go along, so nothing too important from the beginning there. Don't worry about memorizing the entire cofactors of metabolism. As you go through the units, it'll make more and more sense. So really, I've prioritized the information in this. Learn it that way first if you want to do any extra stuff. Make sure you have everything else down very well before you do that. Alright, back to what we're learning here. So, know everything about catabolic and anabolic, have those memorized, have that B vitamins chart memorized, and a few things about them. The lipid-soluble vitamins, anytime you hear lipid-soluble, those are going to be non-coenzyme. And as soon as you hear lipid-soluble, you should automatically think ADEK. Those are the 4 lipid-soluble. A and D are similar in function in that they're hormones. E is the antioxidant. K is a weirder one, blood coagulation. So also know what they do. Vitamin D, again, calcium regulation. Vitamin A for vision, growth, cell proliferation. Vitamin C I have here, it's listed as a weird one. Usually comes up on tests because it is water soluble, but it does not have a coenzyme function. So there's a non-coenzyme chart that lists A, D, E, K, and C is thrown in there too. But remember, lipid, water. Again, vitamin C, amongst other things, is an antioxidant, so C and E go together in function. Sorry if I was off screen on that one. Here's what I was writing down. So the structures of our 3 most common, all I mean by know the structures of them are be able to identify NAD, NAD plus or NADH. These are all going to be used interchangeably. What that is a niacin, which I'll abbreviate B3, plus an ATP. ATP is in the structure, but so a question is usually going to be which one of these is not does not have ATP as part of the structure, and it'll list these three plus another one, like maybe TPP, which is vitamin B1 plus something else. So that one doesn't have ATP in it. These are the three that you have to know that have ATP in it. So FAD is your riboflavin, abbreviated B2, plus ATP. CoA, there's something to it, but the main thing is pantothenate, B5, plus ATP. These three have ATP in them. And that's really the majority of the first unit, so make sure you review, know these vitamins inside and out, catabolic versus anabolic. Because there's not so much to learn, I would highly suggest getting a head start on the hardest unit, which is Unit 3 for most people. So that's the end of Unit 1. I'm going to give you a little preview if you want to get ahead before your classes get too busy. So the most important thing to learn for Unit 3, which its topic is glycolysis, is the main pathway. It's just some blind memorizing the pathway, and then you're going to learn a bunch of things about it, how it's regulated, what it does. But if you wanted to start learning the metabolites, you just keep writing this out until you have it down. So first one is glucose to glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, which makes DHAP plus GAP. GAP is also going to be G3P, same thing, they're used interchangeably. So then here you have DHAP going into GAP. You have an extra gap coming in here, so really this is GAP times 2, but you don't need to worry about that too much now. It'll make sense once you get to the unit. So you have 2 gaps, and you're going to turn that into 1,3-BPG. If you're really interested, all of this is times 2. So you have 2 of these, 2 of these, 2 of these, but you just need to write it out once, knowing that halfway through it doubles. 1,3-BPG goes to 3PG, which turns into 2PG. PG turns into PEP, which turns into pyruvate, and that's the end of glycolysis. At the very least, I would suggest learning that. For you overachievers out there, we'll start learning the enzymes for it. So this is reaction 1. The enzyme is hexokinase or glucokinase, abbreviated HK or GK. And while I'm here, for all of these enzymes, you're always going to know the enzyme class. So this is a transferase, so I'm just going to do another color here. Transferases are class 2, kinases are transferases. Glucose 6-phosphate into fructose 6-phosphate is done by glucose 6-phosphate isomerase. Obviously it's an isomerase, which is class 5. Fructose 6-phosphate into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate is done by something called PFK1, phosphofructokinase 1. Again, kinase, which means it's a transferase, enzyme class 2. Fructose 1,6-bisphosphate into DHAP is done by aldolase. Aldolase is a lyase, or enzyme class 4. DHAP into GAP is done by triose phosphate isomerase, abbreviated TPI. It's another isomerase, enzyme class 5. GAP into 1,3-BPG is done by GAP dehydrogenase. I'm going to put G3P dehydrogenase. Remember, GAP and G3P are interchangeable. A dehydrogenase, anytime you see DH, you're going to hear me say this a million times, anytime you see DH, it's a redox reaction, and it's always going to be niacin dependent. So I'm just going to plant that seed now, and it'll be ingrained in your head by the time you're done with this unit. 1,3-BPG to 3-PG is done by PG kinase. You have another kinase, which are all transferases, enzyme class 2. 3-PG into 2-PG is done by PG mutase. Mutases are similar to isomerases, so they're in the isomerase class. So now going from 2-PG to PEP. That one is called enolase. Enolase is very similar to aldolase, meaning it's a lyase. And then PEP into pyruvate is done by pyruvate kinase. Kinase, transferase, enzyme class 2. So that is a huge head start. You will really thank yourself later if you know this. Again, glycolysis is 10 reactions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 10. So if you have that down, it will make your life easier, just like with the amino acids that I told you about to learn early in Biochem 1. So that's all I have for this unit. Good luck, learn all of this stuff before looking at old tests and quizzes. It'll help you out so much better.